Welcome to Valor and Virtue. I'm Jim Danielson. Today we have with us Sergeant Major Ray Mackey, United States Marine Corps retired. And we'd like to begin by asking the Sergeant Major to tell us a bit about yourself and what led you to become a Marine.
Well, what led me to become a Marine was I didn't want to spend most of my time doing what I was doing in high school. And after high school, I wanted to challenge myself and find something different to do. The Mackey Valley of New Mexico is great people, love them, but I just wanted to see more of the world and see what else was going on. And I didn't feel that I had to, growing up around Fort Bliss and all that, I'd seen plenty of soldiers. So I wanted to explore the world a little bit, I wanted to go see places that I probably wouldn't see. So I joined the Marine Corps, signed up in June, left in November, and got to spend Christmas in boot camp.
Really?
Lucky man.
You said that you went to boot camp in San Diego.
San Diego, yes.
Did you ever spend any time as a drill instructor?
I absolutely did not. I am one of those rarities of a sergeant major that didn't do any drill instructor or any recruiting duty. I went to sea duty as a corporal.
Really?
So I was the last class of sea school in the United States Marine Corps that was at San Diego, California.
Wow. But things are starting to stack up here. The reason I ask that question is because I suspect that a lot of people who might be watching this and who are Marines are like me. We went to Parris Island, and it'd be interesting to sort of consider what's it like at basic training at San Diego compared to Parris Island. Are they just the same and with different scenery, or are they different in some way?
Well, I was a first sergeant at a Marine Combat Training Battalion, and we had to go down to Parris Island to do briefs. So I got a good tour of Parris Island, and especially when I got to go visit the recruits that were going to be my students, give them in briefs that was going to happen what was going to happen to them when they first got the Marine Combat Training Battalion, where they were going to check in, how they're going to check in. But I also got to go see them in their platoons. So I went down there with their first sergeant. And what I noticed, was that, you could see the civilian life off of the island. And you're like, it's a long ways away. But in San Diego, the civilian life was right up on top of you.
Oh, really?
The airport was right next to you, and every day you were out there on the grinder, or you were out there on the obstacle course or running PT, and you were seeing these people fly out, and you weren't. And that was the biggest thing. You could see the people in their houses when you were in your squad bay. It's kind of disheartening at times, and then you just had to dig down and keep going. There's a lot of people that didn't make it, and a couple guys could see their house, so they
could see, really?
They could see their house, and
interesting.
See their mom out in their yard.
Wow. I was at Parris Island for the 4th of July, 1976, the bicentennial of our Declaration of Independence. And there was a fireworks show, but you're in your rack, What was it like being at boot camp for Christmas?
Well, at that particular time of the year, I was at Edson Range, going through our snapping week on the rifle range.
Oh, sure.
So, being from New Mexico, we could see the ocean from where we were on Christmas Day. You could see the ocean, and you could see the people out in their sailboats and their boats and stuff like that. And we're like Christmas Day, the morning part, we're snapping in on the barrels, doing snap-in drills, practice, learning what the procedures were on the range and stuff like that. And the grass was green. It's so green and very soft, So, a lot of people snapping in a prone position, they were probably napping. I don't know, but
so I barely remember it. You like sit there for several hours, don't you?
Yes.
And are the drill instructors moving around to making sure you're paying attention?
Oh well, the PMI usually took most of it. That being Christmas Day, our duty drill instructor walked around, you know, and corrected positions and stuff like that. Sometimes it was contradicting what the PMI said, and
Right.
But when I finally got to see one of my drill instructors, one that was there on Christmas Day, and he was in his alphas. He was a marksman, and so and I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna listen to what he said. So
Yeah, right.
he obviously doesn't know what he's doing, or he had a really bad day. So.
Yeah. So what were you trained in after boot camp when you left boot camp?
I went to infantry training school, not the predecessor to SOI. So went to infantry training school at San Onofre, Camp San Onofre in Camp Pendleton.
Okay.
And I was an 0311.
Now, did you spend most of your time in the Marine Corps insofar when you were in the United States on the western part of the country? Or?
Absolutely not. I did my boot camp. I did my very first infantry tour with what was then 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines. That was attached to 7th Marine Regiment. And ironically, that was just across the hill on a very famous hill that the Marine Corps has out there. I believe it. I'm not going to say what it's called, but it's a mount. Starts with an M, ends with an R. So,
were you ever in the Carolinas?
I absolutely was. I did my first tour with 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines. Actually went and did 2 Okinawa pumps from there, and then when I came back, my intent was to only do my 4 years and scoot out, just like everybody else.
Sure, yeah.
That wants, I want to serve my country, and then I want to go home and be a normal person.
Yeah.
Evidently, I wasn't a normal person, so I kind of looked up what listened to. Back then they were called career planners, not career retention specialists, but we're called career planners, and they're like, hey, maybe put some thought into it. You're getting close. Promotions weren't as easily earned back then. It was no shame in being a Lance Corporal for 4 years. Being a 4-year Lance Corporal.
Really?
Because you could have a good you could have it was hard to be promoted to corporal. It wasn't. They didn't really take into consideration the NJPs back then as much as they do nowadays. They didn't take into consideration any of it was all performance based, what your PFT, your rifle score was, what your pros and cons were. And then that was pretty much, what was your BST score. That's what it was all about back then, and it wasn't like sit down and fill in the dot type BST scores. You had to go before somebody, disassemble this rifle,
Really?
Yeah.
When was this?
What's that?
When was this?
In the 80s.
In the 80s?
Yeah, I don't think they started doing the written thing until around, 1988-ish.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because I was in from 1976 to 1980, and they were concentrating on your proficiency in conduct marks, your physical fitness tests,
Yep.
score, how you shot on the range. Those are the kinds of things they were paying attention to.
Yeah, they've complicated it some. I don't know if it's for the best, or it's for the worst. There's probably some Marines nowadays that can take the test and do really well. There's probably some Marines that don't fit what we say a Marine should look like, but yet they're the most physically fit Marines you've ever seen. They can,
Wow.
they can run their, 21 or 20-minute 3 miles. They can do the 20 pull-ups. They can do the push-ups or whatever they're doing nowadays. they're doing more or something. Maybe not for the best, or maybe not. Maybe for the best. I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't experienced the new PFT. I'm not really into running anymore. So yeah. So I just kind of think back. What was the difference between us and between my generation of Marine. You're kind of my generation of Marine because you were in the 80s, and here I was at the, 82, so not too much of a difference changed, between you and I, but between us and who's wearing the camis nowadays,
Right.
that a lot has changed from our time. Everything from the weapon system to the camouflage utilities to how people get promoted and how they get orders.
Well, even I would say even to the culture they come from into the Marine Corps.
Yes, yeah, and a lot of people are there's a lot of reasons people join the Marine Corps. As a sergeant major, I got to experience a lot of why people join the Marine Corps. A lot of them say, well, because my dad did it, my grandfather did it, my uncle did it. I even had a couple that said my aunt did it. So
Yeah.
and I'm not just talking about male Marines. I had females in my company. I've been involved with the female since the first time females had to start going down range and firing their weapon for score. I believe that was around 1986, 86-ish, around that time frame. It was like, okay, they're gonna come down and they're gonna fire their weapons for the first time. And it was after I left 3-9, I went back to Edson Range, because the retention career planner said some words that I liked, and I said, you know what, I think I can help people. So he goes, yeah, you're going to go to Edson Range. He goes, stay there, and you're going to teach people how to shoot. Well,
I would imagine, go ahead.
Well, there was more to it than just teaching people how to shoot. So.
Right, right. But I found that if you just do it the way learning to shoot the rifle, do it exactly the way the drill instructors told you.
Well, I did it the way the PMI told me. My drill instructor didn't. He had a marksmanship medal. I wanted an expert medal.
Oh, I get you. All right.
Yeah, so.
Now, I have a son who served in the Marine Corps, and when he was a little boy, we used to play a game where we would try to think up all the different kinds of jobs you never want to do. And but one of them that never crossed either one of our minds is breaking horses. And the reason I bring that up is because we say, well, can you tell us a little bit about how you think being in the Marine Corps helped form you as a human being? But I would think anybody breaking horses is already pretty well there. Could you, talk about what that was like?
Well, actually, when I was breaking horses, it was kind of a traveling job. They didn't come to me; I came to them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so I broke. There were some that that came to my brother-in-laws, and we would break them there. And then there was others that I would travel to break them. And breaking a horse, just what we call being green broke, brand new horse, never been rode before, just to where somebody could get up on top of it and then and ride it around without getting bucked off. But it is an animal, and they do have their attitudes just like us. So you got to learn how to read attitudes from the horse. You got to know their body. You got to know their body language. You got to know their temperament. And it's the same thing with Marines. You got to be able to read. You can tell if a Marine is anxious. You can tell if a Marine is not so sure of himself.
Sure, yeah.
And it's kind of like sometimes it takes coaxing. Sometimes it takes very harsh coaxing to get somebody to do something. So and same thing with horses. Teaching you how to carry a human on your back. We're going to jump this stream, or we're going to go across this stream. I would prefer you walk across it, but if you want to jump, we're going to jump. And then now that you've jumped across it, you see it's not so dangerous. And so that's the same thing with Marines. You got to very slowly take them down the line and teach them how to be Marines.
Okay, so what in part what you're doing is trying to build in them a sense of confidence.
Yeah, you bring confidence is a big thing. In any person, any animal, confidence is a big thing. So uh, it, and that's what I want to do. I had leaders like that, and I wanted to be like that. In the 80s, the Vietnam War had just ended in 1975, and for the most part,
yeah.
And everybody was coming home, and there were still some Vietnam veterans that were in my unit, corporal sergeants, and pick their brain. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to know the things they knew and what to expect, and I'm telling you, some of these people were amazing, and unfortunately, when a lot of them came home, they stayed in the Marine Corps, or some of them had gotten out and came back in because they said civilian life wasn't for them.
Sure. Yeah.
And they're like, she goes, I tried. It was just I would be at work on time, and I would work all day, but yet there would be other guys show up hour, 30 minutes late every day, and nothing happened to them. And then they weren't chewed out, or they weren't, fired or anything like that. And they were disheartened by that, and they were getting pay raises, and he wasn't. So a lot of them are like, yeah, I'm getting out of here. So
How do you, I guess, would you say that in order to be disciplined, and in a way that a Marine is disciplined, and of course that'll translate back into civilian life, right?
Yes.
That discipline. But don't you have to have a certain kind of respect for yourself, confidence in yourself, in order to learn the habits of discipline like that?
Absolutely. I believe that you have to. People take things away from the Marine Corps they never thought they would take away from the Marine Corps. I'm coming in here because I want to better most of them, like, they just want to serve that family tradition of serving, in the service, being but then they learn things that they really, and develop things that they'll never really get through of. I mean, I'm 10 years retired, and I still look at the clock and say it's 0800.
Right, right.
Yeah. And somebody told me the other day, oh, it's 0800. No, O is a letter, 0 is a number.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
There you go. So,
well, my wonderful wife Ashley is a total civilian, but she has adopted military time for being around Marines.
Well, yeah, my wife hasn't, and so she's like, "Do you mean 8 o'clock?" Yeah, 0800. That's what I said.
Now you're a sergeant major, so you served in the Marine Corps for a long time.
30 years, 2 months, 29 days.
Wow, and obviously, you became a sergeant major. Could you just talk about what you think? I'm not asking you to boast or anything like that, but just what kind of an individual must you be to be able to go to sergeant major?
Well, as you know, when you become a gunny, that's when you got to make your choice whether you want to be a master sergeant or a first sergeant. And my career was infantry based. I taught at Edson Range as a range coach and as a PMI with young recruits. But my very first company commander, well, not my very first, but my first one that I deployed with in 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines, he decided that he wanted his Marines in his company, in India company, to be cross-trained. So what he did was he broke up the line platoons and sent some of them to machine guns, some of them to mortars, some of them to what was then 0351s. It was the law. It wasn't. They didn't have any of the newer weapons back then. But so we had So we all integrated with that. So I ended up being a machine gunner, in 0311, becoming a machine gunner, cross-trained. And then when I was promoted to corporal, meritoriously, because it was still my first tour, I got meritoriously promoted to corporal. And he said, "Great, awesome, congratulations, go to mortars."
Excellent.
So now I'm cross training on a 60 millimeter mortar, learning how to be a gunner or on a mortar, and then later work the FDC. So by the time I left there and re-enlisted to go to Edson Range, I was already cross-trained, to be a machine gunner and a mortarman, and back then I also had a Jeep driving license, so I was,
Now, did your meritorious promotion to corporal influence your decision to stay in?
It absolutely, it absolutely did. I'm not going to lie. At the time, since I had learned that, Marines aren't just, 03 to 11th, even though that's the cutting edge of the Marine Corps is the 0311. Everything else is support. However, I learned how to work my way up, through the machine gun section, and eventually becoming a squad leader, for the machine guns, and then also becoming a mortar squad leader, and then an FO and work in FDC. Learn how to do that, and then when I went to Edson Range, now I had to learn how to teach people who weren't, who haven't been Marines. And I think by the time they reached Edson Range, I think they were at maybe 3 weeks as a recruit. They did their first 2 weeks down at San Diego. Initial drill, initial PFT, and stuff, and then they came to the rifle range. They were at the rifle range, like week 4, week 3, week 4, just depending where they were in the cycle, and teaching them, some of them who had never held a rifle in their life,
really,
to those who had never, who had handled one their entire life, But I didn't say they handled them safely. I just said they were. So you had to reteach them how to handle things, how to do things safely, kind of like OSHA. I'm going to teach you to do dangerous things, but I'm going to teach you to do them safely.
Right. Well, what the rifle instructors we had would say that they would rather have a recruit who's never shot a rifle before than some guy who's, used to plinking around in the woods and thinks he knows it all. Is that right?
I never had that, really had that experience. The ones that, once they got there and they fell under me as their coach, I told them, I don't care what you knew. This is completely different, because it was iron sights.
Right.
And a lot of them were still, they may have, the AR, the M16 AR style rifle wasn't a big thing back then. Nobody had, it was like nobody really had them, We're all bolt action, or they were lever action. There might have been a couple other semi-automatic weapons out there, but they weren't, the style of weapon that we have nowadays, that's more common nowadays. So we had to teach them how to handle this weapon safely, because the old M16, A1, it had safe, fire, and automatic. All right. Uh-huh. So you had to teach them how to handle that safely, or else you're going to be dumping, 30 rounds, before you know it, if you go back too far.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things to let them do is when they're learning, is let them make a mistake, and then correct it, and tell them why it was a mistake. So that's explain, demonstrate, imitate, prac out. So that's one of the things I used to tell them. I'd show them how to hold the rifle. I explain why I was holding the rifle that way. I demonstrate why I'm holding the rifle, and then they would go through the scenarios of what we were doing, getting into the sitting position, getting into the kneeling position, while keeping their weapon safely pointed down range.
Sure.
Weapon on safe. And and that's one of the things that I don't see a whole lot of that happening nowadays. It probably does. I just don't see it happening. I guess the wartime situation that we've had has taught Marines to be more confident with the weapon, but sometimes it doesn't look like they're as confident as they are being haphazard. They don't practice their muzzle awareness. So.
Do you think it's possible? That's interesting. Do you think it's possible that you can become, I don't know how to say it, so confident or so comfortable with the weapon that you become too casual?
Yes. And don't be complacent.
Right.
Complacent is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, you're right.
So
that is
and once a person becomes complacent, that's when stuff happens. An accident. In my career, I've seen 3 Marines either lose their life or be injured permanently because of complacency, either on their part or by someone else's part.
Wow. So that would be the kind of thing, if you saw it, you would challenge it?
I would. But without a doubt, and it doesn't matter, who it is, what unit they were in,
Do you think your experience as a teacher of these things helped you be more effective at challenging Marines who are being complacent?
Yes.
Explaining why this is dangerous.
Absolutely. That's any NCO's job. That's actually every Marine's job. You see something unsafe, you should say something about it.
Right, sure.
Yeah. And no matter who it is, whether it be, a fellow, you're a Lance Corporal, you see a fellow Lance Corporal doing something, yeah, you should say something. Of course, you're probably going to get some mouth back from him.
Right.
Right. And, but an NCO should correct them. An NCO should correct, it doesn't matter. Even, young officer, sorry, your weapon's not on safe.
Yeah, sure.
And you don't have to yell it across the, parade deck at them. You go up and you just say, hey, your weapon's not on safe. Thank you. And then they'll casually reach back there, not to drop a bomb on somebody,
Sure. What's interesting about this, and it's kind of been part of the tone of this conversation, is what you've been going through different experiences that taken together explain how a young guy, we talk about this here, you need a lot of young people when they're first starting out, they need to overcome a challenge to get some confidence in themselves, but then they just grow and grow from there.
Right.
This is a final question, and you can take it either way that you want. We could ask it as reflecting on how the Marine Corps helped you develop as an individual, but also what does the Marine Corps have to offer, maybe if it's just by making Marines and sending them back into a society, to help an ailing society do better?
Do the right thing for the right reasons. The Marine Corps has always taught everybody that, look, you're walking along, you see, and it's the basic things, like you're walking along, coming to or from the PX, and you see a piece of trash, pick it up. Don't let it go by, pick it up. And there's a lot of veterans out there now, and I'll call them veterans because we're talking about people being out of the Marine Corps, that are doing the right thing. They're like, look, I think we should do this, or they're starting. For example, there's a former Marine of mine who lives in New York City, and he has started a kind of like a neighborhood watch, but in his apartment complex. It's like, yeah, he goes, we're gonna just walk around and just make sure that there's somebody that's, if they live there, fine. If they're a guest there, fine. But if they don't belong there, we're gonna slow them down until the police can come and get them out, or we're gonna get them out of there, ask them to leave, not before we ask them not to leave, not unnicely.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, do you think that people generally know what the right thing to do is?
I believe everybody knows what's the right thing. I think it's instilled in them. They know right from wrong. No matter what culture, where you grew up in the United States, you know right from wrong. It's just that in some societies, that doing wrong is rewarded.
Right.
Sometimes it's rewarded in such a way you spend time behind bars.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's really interesting that people know how to do the right thing. And so you just say, and so when you do the right thing, because it's the right thing, then you're doing it for the right reason.
Exactly. If you're going to, these people that, today's society, we a lot of places, they're like, they praise those that do wrong, and they praise those that are punished for doing wrong. They're like, oh yeah, this guy did it. Yeah. I guess they would call it, they call it street cred. This guy did this. He went to prison for 5 years. He's a hard timer. Yeah. But and that's probably some of the reasons why some of these guys stay in these places where they do, and not and complain that they're not getting anywhere, is because they've been rewarded for doing wrong for so long that now those that need people to help, they're like, look, how do I know you won't do this stuff when you come here?
So you say the Marine Corps does not reward doing the wrong thing.
They absolutely do not reward you for doing the wrong thing. They will not. Sometimes it's very harsh, and enlightening, and people, it wakes people up, but then you're not rewarded for doing the wrong thing, at all.
So the Marine Corps remains committed to honor, courage, and commitment?
I believe so. When I came in the Marine Corps, we didn't have those little cards to remind us of that. A little red card.
Right. Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think I was probably a gunny before I ever received one of those cards. That, hey, we have our honor, courage, and commitment card. We used to have to carry them around.
Sure, yeah.
And had to put them in your wallet, carry them in your breast pocket with your ID, depending on what your SOP was for your unit. And yeah, I'm like, I absolutely do not have one of those. Never needed one, but okay. You're like, oh, here, let me give you one. Okay, I'll carry it just because, that's the SOP. But I didn't need a card to remind me of, honor, courage, and commitment.
Yes. That's really great. Sergeant Major Ray Mackey, thank you very much.
You're absolutely welcome.